Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm Becky Jolson, COSA's Program Manager. We are glad you are here today to join us for our last, not just our last Shop Talk, but our last webinar of the 2025 year. And today we're excited to hear from APPX about AI for state archives. I'll let Steve Frizzell introduce himself and take it away. We will have some time at the end for Q&A, but if you would like to, you can put them in the chat throughout the presentation. All right, Steve.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see that okay, Becky?
Yep.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve Frizzell. I work for APPX Software in Jacksonville, Florida. Many of you have met me at the annual COSA meetings. APPX Software has been an active supporter of COSA now for over 10 years. In fact, a few of you that are here today are customers of ours. So thank everybody for taking the time to attend. For the last 2 years, APPX Software has been actively exploring possible uses of AI, both in our company and in our software solutions. Today, I want to focus on practical uses of artificial intelligence that we are investigating that are relevant to state archives. We will be discussing various ways that you can start to use AI right away if you choose to. This is not going to be a discussion about replacing archivists or redefining archival practice. It is instead about using AI as a support tool to reduce routine workload and improve consistency. While archivists retain full professional control of the tasks that they perform. Everything I will describe today is based on existing archival standards and workflows. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so I hope we'll have lots of good questions and a good discussion after we go through these slides. I do want to apologize. Today I'm going to be reading a good bit of my presentation, but when we get to the end, we'll be doing practical examples of the use of AI. I'm going to show you some actual real life things you can do, and that'd be more extemporaneous. But I found over the years that if I do my presentation extemporaneously, it tends to take twice as long as if I have prepared notes that I read. So I will be reading a lot of notes as we go through the slides. All right, so by now I'm sure that most of you have heard of AI, and you probably have even used a GPT, such as ChatGPT or Gemini, Claude, or Grok. There's any number of different ones that are out there today that are in the news all the time. So one of the questions you might have is, what does GPT stand for? We hear those initials all the time. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Pre-trained because it has a vast reservoir of knowledge that it has at its disposal. And transformers because it actually takes that knowledge and transforms it into another forms. In simple terms, GPT is a large language model designed to work with text. It does not understand records, history, or context in a human sense. Instead, it predicts language based on patterns that it's learned from the large bodies of text that it has. This distinction is important because GPT operates on descriptions and policies and documentation. It does not operate or have the ability to pass judgment or determine intent. GPT models are trained in two different stages. The first stage is pre-training, where the model learns general language patterns from large collections of text. This is why GPT already recognizes archival terminology and standards. you may be surprised to find that it already knows a lot about the archiving profession and about the practices and the standards that you use. And so if you do use GPT and start asking questions, you'll be surprised to see that it already knows a lot about archiving. The second training is fine tuning. That's where a model is constrained to specific tasks and rules where you're getting it to focus on one specific area where it can really be an expert, for example, archiving. GPT is already being used very widely in enterprises, various enterprises, including customer service applications, software development, and research. Some people say, I think Microsoft says that 30% of their programming today is now done by an AI, GPT. So GPT is also well suited for archives because archives already work with structured descriptive data and well-defined standards. And so it's easy for us to take those standards and policies and structured data like EAD or EAC and shove it into an AI and get really good results back. So this slide talks about AI from an archivist perspective. From an archivist perspective, AI should extend established practice, not disrupt it. Archivists define standards, interpret records, and make ethical legal decisions. AI doesn't do any of those things. When used correctly, AI reduces repetitive work and allows archivists to focus on professional judgment, not clerical effort. So what you'll find is that AI is a great tool that you can use to do your job even better, not to replace your job, but to do it better. So I put together a sampling here of 9 different ways that you may use AI in an archive. This is certainly not an exhaustive list. The list could be many times longer than this. But these are the ones that came to mind based on some of the research we've already been doing. And so I've put them up here. We'll talk about them briefly. And then after we talk about these 9 use cases, we'll go through about a half a dozen examples of different ways these use cases can be used in the real world. You don't have to do all of these things. You can adopt them one by one and take advantage of the low-hanging fruit, if you want to call it that. Some of these things are much easier to implement than others. And so you'll find that some of these can actually be implemented with a minimum of effort and can give you a huge benefit. So the first use case is automated description and metadata enhancement. Creating descriptions is an intellectual task. It's dependent on analysis and context. AI doesn't replace that. What AI can do is it can draft or revise scope and content notes, abstracts, and other summaries based on your existing descriptions. So you still have to provide the information, but it can then rework it and rephrase it to be consistent. Archivists still need to review and edit and approve all narrative text and make any final decisions about subject access with regard to descriptive content that an AI might create for you. The benefit here is time savings and improved consistency, not a change in authorship or accountability. The archivist is still responsible for making the final decisions on the information that goes into a finding aid or into a record description. So a second use case is for consistency checking. We mentioned that briefly in the first slide. Many archives have descriptions that have been created over decades of time by many different staff members and even under different standards. AI can flag these inconsistencies and can help you decide whether they should be rephrased or normalized based on current practice. And so if you have old descriptions that are not complete enough or that are phrased differently than you phrase them today, or uh, uh, don't fit the standards that you would apply today to a scope and content node or an abstract, AI can help you reword those and rephrase those to meet today's standards. But it's still up to you to decide which ones you want to apply that cleanup to. So AI can be used as a cleanup tool, but it's not going to mandate that you do it. It's up to you to make that decision. So the third use case has to do with automated transcription of content. We all are familiar with OCR. Obviously, you can take an image, extract the text off of it. AI can do that too. You can take a scanned image of a document, load it into AI, and it will provide you with a really nice transcription of the text that it finds on that document. So AI can look at a document like that. It can draft transcriptions, extract names, dates, places, people, anything, any information that's in that content. It can extract for you very easily. But of course, the original record always remains the authoritative record, regardless of the transcription that you create. Intelligent search across archival holdings. We're all familiar with keyword search. That's what most of us have today. We have the ability to type in keywords, much like you do on Google. You can type in a few keywords and do a search in your catalog, and it'll bring up a list of series that match your keywords. But when we're talking about intelligent search, we're really talking about context-based search. We're talking about semantic search, natural language search, where you can type in a topic and it finds the records based on the topic, not based on the keywords. And that's something that AI can do really good. So reference and research assistance is another area where AI can be very useful. You have a lot of routine questions that come into a research center. And if you had a knowledge-based AI that could answer a lot of those questions, then basic questions, how to use finding aids, policies, reference materials, things like that, the AI could direct the people that come into the research center to where they might find an answer to the question. That frees up the archivist and the research center to do more productive things. Complex searches, things like that, are still going to be done by archivists because they have the intuition and the ability to find records that AI might not find. So internal staff knowledge base, we all have that problem. People come and go. They work for 30, 40 years. They know everything there is to know about your archive, and then they retire. When they walk out the door, a huge amount of knowledge walks out the door with them. Their knowledge and their experience, that institutional knowledge, it's very fragile, especially when there's staff turnover. AI can help solve that problem because you can take all of your policy manuals and all of your documents and procedures and put them into an AI, and then that AI then can provide new staff members with the guidance that they need to know what your policies and procedures are, and to make sure that when they're working, that they follow those policies and procedures. We're in the process of using that here. We're taking all of our manuals and all of our help guides and everything and putting it all into an AI so that as people here leave, retire, or quit, or whatever the knowledge they have leave with them, it'll all be encapsulated in that AI knowledge base. Another area where AI can help is in analyzing the use of resources. You need to have a way to justify which records you're going to digitize, or which records you're going to keep close by to the research center so they can be retrieved on demand. But AI can analyze your data uh, as far as the visits and patrons to the research center and the reason for their visit, which resources they use. AI can analyze all of that and can make suggestions and recommendations for records that should be digitized uh, or which should be made more readily available to the research center. So that's a very useful capability. Reappraisal of legacy records and backlog of records that, or descriptions that need to be reviewed. Um, Stewardship includes reassessing long-held records. Um, AI can help you identify records which need to be reappraised and maybe need to be reviewed in light of today's standards and today's requirements. Um, so it can make good suggestions for you for records that you should review and perhaps reappraise. Um, Again, you have to put your rules in for that. But once you've defined your rules, the AI can apply your rules to the data that you have and identify candidates for reappraisal. We're all concerned about sensitive information, personally identifiable information, restricted content, HIPAA restrictions, things like that. That's another area that AI is pretty good at. It can review the content of documents and it can identify documents and flag them as being documents that need to be reviewed to make sure that we're not about to expose information that has legal liabilities associated with it. So that's an area that really can save a lot of time. Because if you've got to review these documents manually one by one, see if it has any PII or medical content, things like that, AI can really speed that process up. So here's a list of what we call professional boundaries and safeguards that we can apply to archivists and the use of AI. So you read down that list, and what you'll see, the theme here is that AI doesn't replace an archivist. AI makes an archivist, allows an archivist to do their job more productively and even better than they could without it. It's a tool. I like to tell people that AI is the next big tool that makes office work more productive. Some of you have been around as long as I have, and you remember when word processing was first invented and how amazing that was, that we could actually type a letter without having to retype it. Or, AI, word processing was an incredible invention for the office in terms of productivity. And then a few years after that, along came spreadsheets. And again, for accountants and people who analyze data, spreadsheets were just incredible, a great enhancement for those people to do their jobs better, more productively, and have time to do other things that they didn't have time to do. I kind of put AI in that same category. It's been a long time now since we've had a really important addition to the tools that you can use in your office. And I think AI is that tool. Now, it's not perfect. I don't want to make you think it's perfect today. It's not. It's new. It makes mistakes. It can save you a lot of time and do a lot of things very good. You still have to keep an eye on it because it's been known to, as they say, hallucinate. And by hallucinate, they mean it kind of makes things up. And so you may find yourself reading something that AI produced and it sounds really good, just that's an amazing write-up. And then you start researching it and you find out that it made up some of it. It just totally made it up. And it was very convincing at it. And so, the caution is that AI is still new. It can be extremely useful, but you really need to use it knowing that it has to be reviewed. You can't just trust it. So it's a tool that can save you a lot of time, but it still requires your review and approval of almost everything that it does. All right, so now we're going to, oops, didn't need to go to that page. There we go. So now we're going to take a look at some specific examples of things that we've been playing around with in the realm of AI. So one of them is one that some of you may have seen before. I think Aaron maybe seen this. This has to do with North Carolina. So let me share my web browser. So I personally use two different GPTs. I use ChatGPT, which is a product made by OpenAI, and I also use Microsoft Copilot, which is a product made by Microsoft, and which currently is actually based on the same AI that OpenAI uses. So in some ways, the results that you get from the two are similar, but they're also very different because Microsoft has tuned their model to be able to do some things better than the OpenAI GPT, ChatGPT can do. And on the other side of that, ChatGPT can do some things better than Copilot can. So I find myself going back and forth between the two tools a lot, sometimes comparing the results, sometimes because I know one will give me a better result for a specific task than another. But in this case, this example, I used ChatGPT to set up an assistant or an agent uh, that can be used to search finding aids to identify records of interest for someone who's doing research. And so what I did is, just as a trial, was I went out to North Carolina's webpage. They have lots of good stuff on their website. And I went to their private collections where they have the finding aids for private collections here. And I copied and pasted 50 of their personal, their private collection finding aids into a Word document. So one after another, I just pasted them into that Word document. And so what they look like, this is one of them here. And so they've got a really nice finding aid here for this one collection. Lots of good information, records, all kinds of stuff. So this was one of the 50 finding aids that I pasted into this Word document. And then back in ChatGPT, I created what's known as an assistant. And so to do this, you have to have an account. I don't think you can do this if you're using the free version. But I created a GPT, and I had to do two things to make this work. The first one is I had to give it some instructions on what I wanted it to be able to do. So these were the instructions that I provided. I said, you're going to be an archivist assistant specializing in North Carolina archives. And I kind of gave it a little bit of background on what it was supposed to do and how it was supposed to behave. Basically fairly general instructions, but specific to the role that I wanted it to play. And then I also attached my Word document. Down here at the bottom left, you see private collections docx. That's my Word document that has 50 finding aids pasted into it. And so that was really the gist of what I did. Then once I saved that, then I had a special program that I can now use called the NC Archivist Assistant. And it helps researchers navigate the North Carolina archives using finding aid documents. And so I can come down here to the prompt down at the bottom, and I can ask it anything that I want. And it will answer me based on what it knows about those 50 finding aids, and only those 50 finding aids, because in my instructions, I said, if it's not in those 50 finding aids, don't mention it. You're only allowed, all you know is what's in these 50 finding aids. And pretty much it follows that directive. So what I want to do is show you a few examples of things you might ask an assistant like this. So the first one is pretty straightforward. I'm going to copy and paste it in so you don't have to watch me type. And it says, I am looking for all records that identify individuals who fought in the Civil War in North Carolina. Okay, so it's going to look through those 50 finding aids and see which ones include references to people who fought in the Civil War from North Carolina. So I'm going to say, go to it, look for it. Tell me what you find. So it comes back and it says, first of all, there's no single comprehensive record series that lists every soldier. But then it starts listing individual finding aids where it did find references. It says letters and papers of multiple Barbie family members who served in the Confederate Army, including officers and enlisted men, with unit information and wartime correspondence. And then there's three more families. Down here are two more collections that had letters or diaries. And then I guess a couple more down here that had some additional. So, and it also will go a little farther. It will find finding aids that even though they don't explicitly say they include references to soldiers, if it thinks they might include it, it will tell you that farther down. And so this agent is able to quickly analyze and review all 50 of those finding aids and tell you which ones have records that match the criteria of what you're looking for. Now, for you to do that, it takes you a long time to read all 50 of those finding aids and figure out which ones might have records. So this is a much enhanced version of the search that you might do with a catalog. And North Carolina has a nice catalog online. I'll copy that on right now, but their catalog is keyword based. And so you could type in keywords, like soldiers, Civil War, North Carolina, and it would find some of this information. It may not find them exactly the same way or the same list. There may be some variations because keyword matching is very different than matching the context of what you're looking for. And so this search was a context-based search that I did. It analyzed what I was asking. It didn't match keywords. It analyzed what I was looking for and then looked for records that match the context of what I asked it to find. So let's take a look at another one here. I'm going to paste in another prompt. It says, I'm looking for information about commerce on rivers in North Carolina during the Civil War. And what you'll find is something similar again. Searching those 50 finding aids, it comes up and tells you quite a bit about rivers as commercial and logistical corridors during the war. They found that there's a couple of different ships that were mentioned, the CSS Noose. Those are different rivers that had river commerce on them. This is all from the finding aids because these finding aids mention these rivers or they mention shipping on these rivers or things like that. And so it's really interesting how it can put all that together and summarize it all for you. And here's a little summary that put at the end based on everything that it found and the context of it. All right, let's look at another one. I just find it so fascinating that it can do this kind of search. So what I asked it was, I'm looking for records that describe life on a plantation in North Carolina during the Civil War. So this tells you here there's several collections that directly describe daily life on plantations in North Carolina during the Civil War, particularly through farm journals, family correspondence, and the state papers. Then it goes on to list the different finding aids and what they include, what kind of records they have, and so forth. So doing this is pretty easy, pretty straightforward. But maintaining it in this form would not be fun because you'd be copying and pasting a lot of finding aids because there's hundreds or thousands of finding aids on some of the websites for an archive. So what we're looking at is, of course, automating this process so that our customers who use Axiom to to store all of their record descriptions and create your finding aids would be able to have Axiom automatically provide the knowledge base for an AI to answer questions like this. And so that's one of the enhancements that we'll be looking at putting into Axiom in the coming year would be this type of a search. And so it would supplement the catalog search that most people have today. It wouldn't necessarily replace it because there's still an important use for keyword-based searches with facets and things like that. So we're not going to throw that out, replace it with this. This is just another type of search that is based on a different way of finding records. Last thing I'm going to do, I've been asked a question just to show you, see what it says. I think I know what it's going to say. We'll find out. I'm saying when I ask a question, where do you get the information to respond? So I'm kind of curious, right? I'm John Q. Public out there wondering, how does it know all this stuff? And it says, that's a very good question. It says, for your recent questions, I am not using general internet knowledge or outside websites. Instead, I'm looking from the finding aid document you uploaded. And it goes on to talk about it. And here's what it's not doing. I'm not searching the web. I'm not using outside books databases. So it's following my instructions and it's basing its answers strictly on the 50 finding aids that I gave it. And so then it says, if you really want to double check, you can always ask, which collection does that come from? And it'll give you the actual collection. Okay, so I think this is a really, really nifty tool to help find records, and particularly if you're someone doing research and you're trying to find records. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. You have all those finding aids to search through. All right, so that was the first example. So the second one says, use AI to suggest subject headings for finding aids. Okay, I think we can do that. Bear with me while I get my desktop organized here. I have 3 monitors and trying to figure out where everything is a little difficult sometimes. All right, so one of the finding aids that it has in its knowledge base is this one, the Swift and Adams family papers. So I'm going to give it a prompt. Let me go back over here, back to my AI assistant now. And I'm going to paste in a prompt that says, analyze the finding aid for the Adams and Swift family papers and suggest subject headings. Display a table showing the current subject headings in the first column and the suggested subject headings in the second column. Then show a list of additional suggestions for subject headings. So this is very interesting because an AI can analyze your record descriptions, your abstracts, your scope and content notes, your descriptive notes. It can analyze all of that, and it can say, by the way, here's the subject headings you might want to use for your finding aids. So let's see what it comes up with here. A little bigger. Yeah. All right, so over on the left are the subject headings that were included. And so one thing it did was it reworked them to have a different form. Again, that can be controlled by you through the instructions that you give it. But you notice that no standard notation here for hierarchical finding aid or subject headings. Here it took this one, attorney and client, and broke it up, attorney and client, Nash, North Carolina. So it's being a little more specific, including a geographic subject heading in it. Then down here, it came up with categories or additional subject headings that you might consider adding to this finding aid, like land records, North Carolina, Caswell County, political campaigns, North Carolina, 1900. So based on the actual descriptions and the record descriptions and everything that it found in the finding aid, it's suggesting you might want to consider adding these subject headings. That way, keyword searches and searches based on subject headings are going to be more likely to find this record. Down here, it says there's a few more things we can do if we want. So we can align these headings with Library of Congress subject headings. Format, excuse me. Formatting conventions. We can also propose name authority refinements. So it can go beyond just saying, here's a list of finding headings. Remember, I said earlier that you might be surprised that it knows so much about archiving. It obviously knows about Library of Congress subject heading files and data and the conventions that go with it. So it's a pretty smart helper in that regard because it's already got the basic knowledge that you would expect an archivist to have. So let's look at it one other way. In this case, let's copy and paste a description, an abstract, and a collection overview from another finding aid, and ask it to identify subject headings. And so I'm going to start by saying suggest subject headings based on the following abstract collection. So now I'm going to paste in an abstract and a collection overview from another finding aid. So you can't really see it all here right now, but there's an abstract. You go farther down, there's a collection overview. And I'm going to say, now that I've written these narratives, what subject headings should I use to go with them on my finding aid? And so it's come up with several categories, personal and family names. So it found all the names that are mentioned and said you might want to include personal family names as subject headings. Then it found different occupations and roles, lawyers, merchants, clerks, political activity, military service, legal land and estate records, types of records, geographic coverage of the records. This is, I think, a really useful use. You don't necessarily have to use all these. It's up to you to decide whether to use them or not. But it did the grunt work. It went through there and it analyzed them and said, here's all the things that you might want to identify as being subject headings. So let's tell it to normalize these to the authorized LCSH terms, just to see what it does. I'm going to paste that in. Normalize suggested subject headings to the LCSH form. So now it comes back and says it's reworked them so that they now conform to LCSH and then subject heading form. A little hard to see without comparing them side by side, but well, trust that it did that. Let's just take another look at another possible use. We can use AI to analyze an existing finding aid and suggest revisions to a note, such as an abstract or a scope and content note or something like that, right? So let's do this. Since we know it has 50 finding aids in there already, let's have it analyze one of those and see if it can rewrite the abstract for us. See what it does. So I'm saying analyze this finding aid, Adams and Swift family papers, PC 1764, show the text of the current abstract based on the analysis of the finding aids, suggest an updated abstract. So here's the current abstract. Then here's the suggested updated abstract and the rationale for the revisions. So it says the current abstract is biographically rich, but it overemphasizes narrative biography. It understates the importance of land, estate, and probate records. It doesn't clearly convey three major functional components of the collection. And so the updated abstract is this. And so presumably it addresses those issues. What it's done, it has rewritten that abstract for you to address these issues that are identified with the original abstract. So if you want to study this later, I think you can probably watch the replay, the video of it, and pause it and read this stuff. So I'm not going to read all this to you. It's way too long to read. So here it says we can align this abstract with DAX abstract best practices if we want. So it knows what DAX is. That's nice. We can shorten it to be a briefer abstract and provide a longer scope note. So it's willing to redo the scope and content note too if we want it to. So it's very, very helpful. It always volunteers. Once you ask it to do something, it always volunteers to do some additional follow-up activities. And a lot of times, it's good things to do. All right, so let me find my slide again. Okay. All right, so let's look at, we talked about keyword search versus natural language search a little bit. But a real world example where we're actually using it in one of our products is with our email system. So I'm going to switch to our email system. So our email processing system has a search, a public search for published collections. And that search screen, I'm going to close this. All right, so if I click on this, it brings up the search page. And in this case, I only have one collection that's been published. And it's a collection of 12,000, almost over 12,000 emails from my cache of emails that I have on my desktop. And so, I can search these emails. I have a couple of different ways I can search them. I can use traditional keyword searching and facet searching. You see they have facets on the sidebar over here on the left. Up here, I have a field for keyword searching. But I also have a field here called natural language semantic search. That means I can search these 12,000 emails based on content that I'm looking for, not based on keywords. So I want to show you a couple examples of how that might work. Um, so first, I want to explain what is how does this work? This semantic search, this context-based search. It's using uh, it's using an approach called vector search. Um, the way it works is it takes the content. In this case, it takes the content of an email and it converts it to numbers. In my case, I have it convert, every email gets converted to 768 numerical values. Those 768 numbers represent the content of the email in numerical form. Um, so how do I search numbers? There's no keywords, there's no text. All that's stored is a string of numbers. So when I type in a search phrase, the first thing the system does is it converts my search phrase to a string of numbers, 768 numbers representing my search phrase. And then it uses some really powerful mathematical algorithms and magic, and it says, take my numerical phrase that represents my search and search all of my content using the numerical vectors that I've created for the content and find which ones are closest to the match. Well, again, it's matching numbers, not keywords. It's matching a numerical representation of the content. It's pretty incredible that it can do that, but it actually does. I'll show you just to be curious. I'll show you what I can get this out of the way. Same problem. Here we go. So we use Solar for our searching, and let me zoom this in a little bit. So in Solar, this particular data element is numerical. That's the numerical representation of the content that you see just above that. It says, good afternoon, Malad, and it goes on. It took that content and converted it into this numerical string. And so when I do a search, that's what it's searching. It's searching that numerical string using the numerical string that represents my search phrase, and it finds which ones match. And that match becomes a semantic match, not a keyword match. It's more of a match based on what you're looking for, not the words you're looking for. And so we've implemented that. Here it is. Okay. So we've implemented that in our email system here. And so I'm going to show you a couple examples of comparing keyword and semantic searching. So my first example is going to be a keyword search. I'm going to search for postal webinar email processing. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've done webinars talking about our email processing system. So there's lots of emails in here about that topic. And so if I tell it to search, it comes back now with emails here that have to do with posted webinars, ShopTalk webinars, email processing, and so forth. So it found some matches based on those keywords. And of course, the keyword matching is looking for those 4 words. And if it finds all 4 of those words in an email, then that's a really good match. If it only finds 2 of them, then it's still a good match, but it's not as good as finding all 4 of those words. So keyword matching is fairly predictable, because the one at the top of the list probably has all 4 of those words in it, and the one at the bottom of the list might have only 1 of those 4 words in it. And so if you were to look at these, you probably would find, you could see it in the subject line, email processing, as we search the subjects and the content, so you can find them anywhere. All right, so if I do the same search using a semantic search, I'm going to put in a similar phrase. It's basically, it's a topic. So the question, what topic am I wanting to search for? And so I'm saying I want to search for COSA webinars about email processing. That's my topic. And so if I tell it to search, the search takes a fraction of a second longer. But using those numbers that I just showed you, it came up with the matches for that. And the very first one says it'll be featured in a COSA ShopTalk webinar. So that's pretty good match. What I'm looking for, and it was done without matching any words. It was done by just matching numbers. So I find that pretty amazing myself, even though I have a degree in mathematics. I still find it pretty amazing. And so the oh, I pasted in the wrong place. Let's try that again. It needs to go over here. All right. So we still got basic shop top webinar at the first. And in fact, the first several ones deal with that specific topic. All right, so the point is either search will find results, but the results will be somewhat different because the method used to find the most relevant matches is very different. One is based strictly on keywords that are found in the content. The other is based on the topic. In fact, the keywords don't even have to be found. You can still match even if those words don't appear anywhere in the email, because it's looking for the topic, not the words. So that's one example. So here's another example. Let's start with a keyword search. What I'm looking for is the keywords are preparation, emails, processing. And so when I do a search, here's some matches: preparing emails, source content for ingest and processing. That's a pretty good match. And if you read some of the other subjects, they're obviously relevant matches. Again, I'll take the topic now and do a search. The topic in here, I'm going to search. And the top one is a little different now. The most relevant one using that search is called email processing policy. Looking at the subjects, they all still deal with the same basic topic, but the content search, the semantic search, ranked them differently. The one it put at the top based on content was more relevant than the one that was put at the top based on keywords. So there are differences in what you'll get. The semantic search will probably find more matches than the keywords because it will find matches that don't necessarily have the keywords in the content. It'll still find the ones that have the keywords because they're going to match the context of what it's looking for. All right, so we'll do one last one here.
Steve, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let you know we have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Oh, wow. Okay. All right, I will do another example there then. So let me, that's why I do extemporaneous presentations. So let me look at my list of uses and see if there's any more I want to at least mention. More like this and transcriptions. All right, so I'll do this real quick since I'm on the page already. So one of the other types of search we can do is I'm going to select this first one. I'm going to come over here, and there's a tab here called similar emails. This is what we call a more like this search. In other words, I said, take this email and search all 12,000 emails and find me the 50 that are most like the one I'm looking at right now. And so if I'm doing research, that's pretty powerful, because I found something that's really interesting. Now I'm saying, find everything else that's similar to what I'm looking at. And so that's what you can do with the, again, this is a a variation of a keyword search that does this, but it's very powerful for doing search. Uh, and I'm not going to show you the transcription example. It wasn't that good anyway. So, so we're done. We're done with examples, and we're actually done with the presentation. So we have about 3 minutes probably for Q&A. So I'll open it up for any questions if people have questions.
We did have a question come in earlier from Aaron. Would
Okay.
an AI assistant be for internal use, external use, or both?
It could be for either, but you would probably uh, tailor the instructions differently depending on the target user. So for internal usage, your instructions would be different on how it should behave and what it should tell you and show you. The instructions might be different than what you would give it for a public access of the search. Okay. Any other questions? No. I hope you found this interesting. I know it's a topic that I've found very interesting for the last year or two that I've been working with it. And if you're interested in finding out more about what we've been doing, you can certainly get in touch with me. I'll be happy to talk with you and provide more information. So I would say this concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Steve. It was really great. And if anybody has any further questions, please put them into the chat. I'm going to switch over and just do a couple of final slides
Stop
to
sharing.
go through. Upcoming programming. We are pretty much done for this year. This was our last one. So the next thing coming up is in January with our annual What's on Tap for COSA in 2026. Please make a note to attend that. It's actually open for registration as well. That's where you will hear all about our plans going into the next year with our programming and all sorts of good updates. It's a good one to make sure you catch. And we are looking for people to help in our working groups and our committees. All of our working groups and committees are always looking for new members to help. This is where a lot of COSA's success comes from. Everybody being willing to help and a great way to interact with your colleagues and a little bit of professional development. So our annual meeting planning committee and our awards committee are the two right now that we're trying to get started pretty much at the start of the new year. So if you would like to participate in either of those, reach out to me. But all of our groups are looking for new members. And you can reach out to me. I can put my email in the chat. And we also have affinity groups. If you're looking to talk with your colleagues about different topics of interest to you, these are our current groups, and we're always adding more. They're all open for participation. The ones with asterisks are the ones that we're looking for people to host them. So if you're looking to get involved in hosting or leading a discussion or just making sure it gets scheduled and provide that opportunity for people to get together to talk, um, we are always looking for help with that as well. And as always, visit our website, which has some new pages recently updated, so we have more information available now. Facebook and YouTube. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.